Hey there, welcome to the Hey Church podcast. My name is Preston. I'm your host today, and today we're talking all about engaging new visitors. This is something that I am incredibly passionate about. I have lived out of state, out of the country, and multiple times in my life had to find a new church, and it is the most daunting experience. And it's also something I'm incredibly passionate about because new people means new opportunities to share the gospel, for people to come into the church and find community, healing, and that's what the local church exists for. So I love this topic. I love talking about it, and I love helping churches grow in this area. So today, as we talk about this, the goal is that you'll have a few tips and tricks that you can walk away with and apply this Sunday and really start engaging those new visitors. So what does it mean to engage a new visitor on Sunday, or what's the end goal of doing this? So every Sunday, you probably have the opportunity to engage a new person. So for our church, it's pretty common to have a few new people every week. That's not always the case, but typically you're getting some sort of flow of new people coming into the church. And that could be people from all different types of backgrounds. So you either have Christians who have moved to the area. So those are people who are probably more comfortable coming into a church setting, even though that's still scary to come into a new setting, regardless of where you're at in your walk with Christ, especially for this day and age. Everybody's an introvert. I don't know any other extroverts. It's 1 in 100. So walking in somewhere new is such a scary experience. So your first person that's coming in is probably an established Christian, moved to the area, or maybe they're trying to find a new church for whatever reason. So that kind of leads us to our next person, which is somebody who is a Christian but is either coming in with a little hurt, or maybe they stopped going to church, so now they're trying to find that church again. So this is somebody who's coming back to faith, or has some kind of baggage, and so that's even more scary to walk back into a church community. And then your third person, by and large, is going to be a new person who has not heard really the gospel before, has not really come to church. So this is either somebody who's been invited. For us, they see signage. In our location, we get some heavy vehicle traffic, and so we got A-frames and stuff, which have paid dividends. Definitely get signage in your community. And people will drive past it on their way to work during the week, and then they'll come in on a Sunday morning. So these are people who are just interested in coming to church, and there's some pull to it. So this is the people we get the most excited about. We get excited by everybody. We get the most excited about that, not just about growing numbers of church, but growing individuals in their faith. So again, somebody who's coming into your church is somebody who hasn't heard the gospel. That's somebody who could get saved that Sunday. So it is so important that we are engaging them from the moment that they come in, not focused on, oh, we gotta get the numbers up, or we gotta get our ties up, so we need to build our numbers. But genuinely, we want people to meet Christ, and so we need to engage them from the moment they walk into the door. So here's a few things we're going to talk through on roadblocks that kind of stop the engaging process and what we can do to fix it. Again, as I mentioned, I have been through this experience of going to churches. I grew up in the church. I'm a pastor's kid, so I actually am kind of one of the extroverted type of people who's comfortable talking, just because as a pastor's kid, you learn to talk to everybody, and you're talking to everybody every Sunday. And so for me, it's a little bit easier, but as I moved and went through different phases of my life, I would go in and visit new churches. And this was always a funny experience, especially when you are somebody who grows up in the church, is you have your expectations. So whenever I walk into a church, I look to be greeted pretty quickly. I'm a little bit of a church diva, so you can comment about that. But I look to be greeted by either a welcome team or just somebody in the church. That's something that I look for. I think a lot of people form their opinions about churches or community or groups of people, even taking the context out of church, fairly quickly. And so if you come walk into a party or a group setting and you're not welcomed in, you feel like an outsider, which is a horrible feeling. I kind of relate it to the cafeteria. I went to a public school, and the cafeteria was such a scary place, especially if you're a new kid in school or like your freshman year starting school again, going to a different building. Is you need to understand the culture, you need to understand the flow of things, like where do I stand, where do I go, who do I sit with, what tables can I sit at, what tables can't I sit at. And so there's so many unspoken things that you don't think about until you're on the outside. So that's one roadblock, is as mature Christians or aged Christians who have been in the church for a long time, we get desensitized to what a new person feels when they walk in. What are their senses telling them? Does the building smell good? Does it look good? Are they greeted when they walk in? So let's talk about a few roadblocks. So the number one roadblock, as I mentioned, is whenever I walk into a church, is I love to be welcomed or greeted. Same thing when you walk into a store or anywhere you go, is when you get welcomed into a place, you immediately feel a little bit at peace because makes you feel like you're supposed to be there. If you've ever walked in somewhere and just been stared at or looked at, it makes you feel like an outsider. It makes you feel like, man, I don't think I'm supposed to be here. But as soon as somebody says, "Hey, welcome in. So glad you're here." If you're at a store, how can I help you? Or if you're at a church setting, how did you hear about us? Or how's your day? Even just keep it simple. So number one roadblock is having that welcome team, which is your volunteers. On a Sunday morning, you have volunteers for everything, your worship team, your AV, you got pastors, meeting leaders. You have a bunch of people who have a bunch of roles. And so I go to a smaller church under 100. And so on a Sunday morning, our teams are spread a little bit thin, just out of need. We just don't have enough volunteers for everything that we would love to do on a Sunday. So we kind of have our bare minimum covered, which is your kids' ministries, worship, you get your ushers, and then hospitality is one of our key focuses. So we put volunteers on our welcome and hospitality team every week. If we didn't do that, that means that all of our core team would there would be time poor on a Sunday morning, which means when a new person walks in, they don't necessarily have the capacity to go and welcome them all the time. Now, you should always make time for new people. Again, that's our number one priority, is sharing the gospel and encouraging one another every Sunday. So we should also kind of work on that culture of, hey, I know you got to do stuff to make sure Sunday morning is awesome, but take the 30 seconds to say, hey, welcome in. Even better is have a whole volunteer team that is dedicated to this. So even one or two people, make sure that they've put the coffee out or whatever you have there, and then have them by the front doors about 10 or 15 minutes early. New people are always early. And so typically they're going to walk into a more empty room. Your regulars are going to show up 5 minutes after the service starts. So you want people there early who can welcome in new people. So that's number one, your volunteers. They're probably spread thin on other roles, so make sure that you have volunteers scheduled to welcome people in on a Sunday morning and train them. Get the people who are extroverts, get the people who smile, who love people and can connect really well. And train them on, we'll talk about this a little bit later on, but following up and creating a connection point. So something I do, just because I know that I love it, is when I meet somebody, is I try and connect with them obviously on things that we like. So whether that be business, so what's their career or recreation? Are they an outdoorsy person? I ride motorcycles, so if they ride a motorcycle, then we're instantly in sync. So make connections that way, and then create some sort of follow-up. So grabbing their phone number or an Instagram or any way to follow up and connect. And it's not in like a salesperson way, but in a genuine, hey, you're cool. And I think we connect and let's do this. If you do not connect with somebody, find somebody who does. If you find out they love to knit or sew, I don't know, something random, or garden, find somebody in your church who you know and say, oh, this person, hey, have you met so and so? They love this. Start that conversation and connect them. So having a welcome team can facilitate all of those things. The next thing I kind of touched on right there is building that culture of welcoming. So you should have dedicated volunteers, but make sure that every Sunday you make sure to put the focus on your people. So this can be set by the pastor. This can be set by your team leaders. But so for again, just using anecdotal examples, at our church, our worship team stops the sound check at 9:30. Service starts at 10. That allows us a few minutes to pray together, and then we all go up to the front room. And that means that any new person that walks in is immediately greeted by a group of people who are ready to engage and talk with them and hang out. And so it also just makes the room feel more full and warm when people walk in rather than walking into an empty building with only two people welcoming you. So that's a culture point for us. And that's something that our pastor talks about. That's something that us as leaders, we talk about to our team. Say, hey, it's time to get out there. We're going to welcome and greet people. So volunteers, number one, build a culture of welcoming and connecting. And then three, this one's a bit more of a practical one that you can apply right away. The other two might take a little bit of time to set up, getting the right volunteers, making sure that's on the schedule, or building culture. Culture can take a little while to build. But this one, you can change right now and set it up for Sunday morning. And that is room flow. This is something that's really critical, in my opinion. As a new person, when you walk into a building or a store, wherever you are, you immediately want to know what your next step is. So for a church foyer, you should have a welcome team and then have something for the new person to go to. That's not their seat. So again, our church, we don't open our doors to the sanctuary till 5 minutes until service starts. The point being, we want people to stay in the front room, connect, and build community. So when a new person walks in, they're immediately welcomed and greeted, and then have something for them to go to. So whether that's like churches love to put out donuts or cookies, that's like a little station, or coffee. So if you have a coffee bar where somebody's making coffee, have them go there. I've seen churches that actually have a new person corner, or some of them call it visitor centers, but like something info where they can go and find out more information. This allows kind of a relief for that new person, especially if they are introverted. Not everybody's going to want to stay and talk with the welcome team. So the welcome team might just say, hey, how you doing? That makes them feel welcome. But then that person might want to just go and explore the area, get familiar. So oftentimes they might escape away to the bathroom, or escape to a corner and just play on their phone, or pretend to play on their phone. But if there's a coffee station, if there's an info station with resources, then they have a place to go. One more thing that we do is during the service, this one can get a little bit awkward, and I don't know, always know how I feel about it, but we do have a welcome visitor section, and we keep it really low key, where during announcements, we just say, hey, this is what our church is about. If you're new, we're super excited that you're here. And we have little welcome bags. We don't announce this. Oh, well, sometimes we do. We say, hey, we've got welcome bags. If you'd like one, our team will get you one. And because our church is small, and because we have a dedicated welcome team who knows the whole church pretty much, when a new person comes in, they can get those welcome bags and bring them to the visitor, just because we can identify them pretty easy. This is another thing that you're just putting in their hands. It's got water. We put waters, mints. I think we put like little about us pages. And so they've now got information, and they've got a little gift, and that's great. And we like water because, water is always helpful. And then mints, because if you got bad breath, then we can help them out. And then the about us page that we put in there has a follow-up form. Again, building the relationship is so important, and creating the next step for your visitor. So the follow-up form or about us has like our text to give, or not text to give, but our text number. So they can text hello to this number, and then it puts them into a drip feed that sends them information throughout the week. So 2 hours or immediately they get like a welcome message like, hey, we're so excited you joined us this morning, blah, blah, blah. And then I think they get a message a couple hours later, and then one a few days later, and then one a few days later after that. And so that way they're immediately in a welcome flow, and each message tells them a little bit more about the church, a little bit more about how they can get involved. So it tells them about our volunteer opportunities, tells them about our small group opportunities. That way they know this is a place that I can plant myself and grow. So just to recap, a few things that roadblocks that there are and a few things that you can update is your volunteers, creating time for your volunteers. So build a welcome team, put them on the front doors, make sure as soon as somebody walks in, they are welcomed and engaged with. Two, the culture. So building up the culture of welcoming. This goes across the board for all of your volunteers. Your whole church should have this culture of welcoming new people. Three, room flow. Set up the room in a way that when somebody walks in, they know exactly where to go, where to sit, where to stand, what's next. So one more thing I forgot to mention about that is we've got a TV in the front room that has slides about what's going on in the life of the church. And also when the countdown goes on, it goes on there. So people know to kind of move in. So again, just build out the whole experience for a new person. Those are a few tips for engaging new people on a Sunday morning. Again, here at Hey Church, we help out with your communication. So if a new person does text that number, hello, to your church's phone number, then we can set up those automations. We can text them for you. We can also send out emails, set up your website, all sorts of things. So if you need help with communication in your church community, let us know. We're here to help. Find us at heychurch.co. Instagram at heychurch.co, and email us any questions or comment on this. We'll see you next week.